Hi, greetings everyone. In this video, we are gonna see how to create a work resource. In project, a work resource is one you assign based on the time, like a person who works full-time or half-time, or a moving truck that you rent for 5 days. When you create work resources, you provide basic information, name, initials, work group, and so on. You also specify how much resources are available and when. So project can calculate the schedule. If you set up the resources cost fields, the program can also calculate your costs. So to look at the work resources, go to the resource sheet here on the View tab and then click on the resource sheet, and here we have several work resources. Your first choice is whether you want to create generic resources or resources for the specific people. So for example, you can create general resources like the ones here with the job skills, the relocation, project manager, office manager, telecom admin. So let's say we are going to create a new resource for a network admin. So you type the job skills in the resource name field and press enter. You can see the project creates a work resource. Well, these generic resources are really good early on when you are staffing up the project. You can put in the skill that you need, you assign projects so you see how many of those resources you need, and then when you get the real people and you have actual names, you can replace the generic resources with the people assigned to your project. If you create the resources for the actual people, then you put their names in. Usually you want to do last name, first name, so it's easier to find them unless the team is really small. So press enter and I have got another work resource. Well, the next field is initials, and you can see the project takes the first letter of the resource name and puts it in the initials field. Well, that's not very useful because it doesn't tell you very much, and it's also going to lead to a lot of duplication. So typically you will want to put in a few more initials. For generic resource, you can just abbreviate the names. So maybe net for the network admin. I'll say okay. And for the person, John Peter we will put in as JP and say OK. Initials are really useful and helpful if you want to have resources show in your Gantt chart timescale. You can assign the initials instead of resources name so that the name don't take up as much space, but you can still see who's assigned. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can't have commas and brackets in the resource names. So if you are categorizing your resources, so if you are going to do last name, first name, just leave the comma out. The next field is the group field. That's good for categorizing your resources, so you can see that some of the resources already have a group like the IT group and then the vendors assigned to the project. You can use the group field to put all your resources together so that you can see everything that the IT group is doing, or you can even group by the vendors to see how much you are spending on the outside vendors. So for example, the network admin is in the IT group, whereas John Peter is actually a contractor. Maybe we will set up a new group called contractor. Now the next field that you come to is maximum units, and you can see its maximum. Now the next field that you come to is maximum units, and you can see its max, but it actually means maximum units, and this is the part of the work resources availability. The other part is over here in the base column, which actually stands for the base calendar. So these two fields will tell the project how much a work resource available. On the first one, the max units, project fills in 100%. And that means that the resources is dedicated on 100% of their availability time is dedicated to their project. Most of the time that's what you want. If you think about it, when somebody attends a meeting, they don't attend the meeting half time. They are either there or not. So 100% is good value. The one time where you might increase the value, you have a team of people with interchangeable skills. So for example, the movers here, let's say you have the team of 5 movers and you really don't care which of the 5 you get, but you have 5 of them, so you can change the maximum units to 500. To indicate that you have 5 full-time workers. The base calendar, on the other hand, defines the working schedule for the work resources. For example, let's say that John Peter, the contractor, works part-time. So we assign the Office Relo, Office Milo part-time calendar to this resource. Well, let's see how the maximum units and the calendar work together. So I double click the resource row and the resource information dialog box comes up. I'm going to go to the General tab here and click the changing time. Now you can see here that it says 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So when I go to worksheets and click on details, when I select here, it says me that it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If I go look at the worksheet tab, I have got the default worksheet for that part-time calendar and click the details, and then I select Monday through Friday, and you can see that the part-time schedule is from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Well, John Peter is assigned 100% to the project, so that's 100% of his availability. Well, that's based on the calendar, and in this calendar the work week is 9 hours per day, 5 days of week. So he is available for this project 45 hours a week. So I will cancel out of here. The other thing that you can do is you can actually change a resource calendar. For example, to show when they can take vacations, that sort of thing. So do that, I will click on cancel here and get out of this dialog box. And in this case, I am going to go to to the Project tab and click the Changing Working Time. Well, now you can see I have got the John Peter resource calendar is open, and you can see that it's based on the part-time calendar. So that's still in the place. But now we are actually going to put things that are specific to John Peter. In this case, we are going to add his vacation that starts on 5th of August 2014 and it finishes on August 9. Now you can see that those days are set up as non-working days. So click on OK to close this dialog box. You can see how to use the cost fields when we talk about setting up of the resource costs. Now I am going to open up the information dialog box for the project manager. So double click and resource information dialog box comes up. You can see that there's actually quite a few fields you can fill in for the resources. One of them is the generic checkbox. So since this is a job skill name, turn on the checkbox, and that way you can check your project and look for the generic resources that are assigned. Then you will know who you still have to replace before the work actually gets underway. You can also do things like change the resource availability during the different date ranges. On the cost tab, we can set up different cost tables. For example, if you have a contractor who charges different amounts depending on the work they do, you can actually set up these different cost tables to reflect those different rates. Now, one thing that project does when you assign the resources, if you type in the resource name that doesn't exist in your project file, project will automatically create a new resource for you. Well, the problem with that is if you introduce a typo into the resource name, you will end up with a duplicate resource, and that causes all sorts of problems. So you can tell the project not to create those new resources for you automatically. To do that, go to the File tab, choose the options, and then go to the Advanced category. You can see down the general options for this project section. They automatically add new resources and tasks, and the checkbox is turned on. If you don't want the project to automatically add new resources, turn the checkbox off. That way, if you type a name that doesn't exist in the project file, project will ask you if you want to add the resource. If it is new, valid resource, click yes to add, and if it's a typo, you can click on no and then choose the resource that you want. After you create the work resources, you are ready to assign them to tasks. Once you do that, project uses the values from the resource fields to calculate the schedule and the costs. I hope the concept is clear to you. Thank you.